Hello, all of you coaches and team travel planners. Welcome to the DU Athletics COVID-19 Team Travel Protocol Logistics. As you probably already know, I'm Adam Gleason, the Travel and Finance Coordinator. If you don't know me, we're about to become really good friends. If you do know me, we're about to become really good friends. I'm a former women's basketball director of ops at Oklahoma State and here at DU, and I've been in this role for a couple years now. Make sure you save my cell phone number there, as well as my email address in case you have any questions or you need any clarification. As you'll find out as we go through this presentation, you and I will be working very closely together this year as it will look very different. Okay, so the importance of this protocol, especially related to logistics, is obviously DU is committed to keeping you and your team safe on the road. So a lot of these things are going to seem pretty restrictive, seem maybe a little bit much or intense. Just know that DU is trying to keep you and the community itself safe from COVID-19. And traveling obviously is something that should be avoided, but can't be in our case while we compete on the road. And so this protocol is written with that in mind. It's not written to make your life harder or anything like that. And that's where I see my role coming to play to try to help you get through all of these things and make it easier for you, or as easy as possible through this time. So as we know already from what we've experienced here on campus, transmission of COVID-19 is a lot more likely to occur off the field than it is on the field. And so knowing what to do during the travel portion of any away contest is so extremely important, because we know that's the most likely place where someone might get COVID-19 rather than during the actual competition. And so it's really important for you and your athletes especially to know that it's a privilege to be able to travel and represent DU during COVID time. As you're probably aware, the rest of the campus is on a travel ban right now. And so the exception made for athletics is pretty significant, both from a cost perspective as well as from a safety perspective. And so we need to do our job to make sure that we can demonstrate that we can keep DU and its community safe while we travel for our away competitions. So this protocol is specific to team travel. It's not related to recruiting or personal travel. So if you have those questions, refer to the DU COVID off-campus employee travel document that was sent out a couple months ago. This protocol was actually written internally by myself and some other members of our team, the business office. Julie and senior staff assisted as well. And really what it was meant to do is to help us waive the requirement to approve each trip through campus, which was going to be pretty challenging considering our timeframes for things. And we also just wanted to be able to kind of streamline that process. So it does waive the requirement for us to approve each trip with campus, and it also gives us some specific exceptions which will help us with our specific needs. That being said, I know going through this, immediately through your mind, you're going to be thinking, wow, travel's going to look really different. I don't know if this is possible. Trust me, I've been there. I was the one writing this for the most part, and I did my best to appease your needs as well as campus's requirements. And so I think this document is a pretty good element of cooperation and teamwork. And so you and I will work together to figure out the best way to make travel work for you. But just go ahead and get it in your head right now that travel is going to look way different, and we may need to be creative, but we're going to get through it just like we've gotten through every other piece of COVID-19 so far. And so I'm here to help, and I think that I can be a great asset to you. And again, just know that working together is going to be our best avenue forward, as I'm kind of the bridge between campus and you, so I can kind of buffer both sides and know what's going on and try to help things go smoothly. Okay, so competition schedule and travel party size approval. This is really the first step that you're going to need to take before you can start booking travel. And this goes for every single team. We've done it for the teams that are already out there competing, like the basketballs and hockey, and we'll do it for every team moving forward. So the first thing that you will need to do is get your competition schedule reviewed and approved by your primary sport administrator. This has probably already occurred. You've probably already worked with them, but what we need to happen is that approval needs to be in writing and sent via email to myself, the Travel Finance Coordinator Business Office, so that we can go ahead and get that moving forward. The other piece of approval that we'll need is the travel party size. So that needs to be reviewed and approved by your primary sport administrator as well, and sent as an email to myself. Now, it can be different per trip. You know, if you need to have an extra person on a certain trip because of having multiple games on that trip, whatever it might be, that's totally fine. Really, what I need to do to allow things to move forward on the travel arrangement side is I just need both of those things to be sent in writing as approval from your primary sport administrator. And your primary sport administrator is bringing those to the senior staff meetings to be discussed. Okay, so scheduling expectations, you know, generally speaking, as you can imagine, you know, our expectation is, and the university's expectation is, that you're prioritizing scheduling competitions against those local opponents that you could do day trips for. Day trips are significantly safer from a COVID side of things, and they're significantly cheaper from a budgetary side. And with both of those concerns this year, we need to prioritize scheduling those competitions when possible. Now, not every sport has opportunities to play local away games, and so if that's not possible, or you need to continue adding competitions, then we would suggest regional opponents where you could drive. Again, driving is significantly safer than flying when it comes to COVID, and it's also most of the time cheaper, and so this would be our second priority. Finally, we know that some conference games and some other competitions may require air travel. So for all non-regional competition where it's not clear that you can drive, where a decision needs to be made between driving or flying, that decision will need to be made by the primary sport administrator. So again, if I'm asking for those approvals or for your primary sport administrator's input, it's not me trying to control your schedule or me trying to be over powerful. Trust me, I would rather let you do your thing like we have in the past, but it's easier for us to just have that on file so that when the university comes back and questions our decisions, we have those approval processes in place, excuse me. Okay, travel party expectations. Travel parties should be limited to essential personnel only. So these would be personnel that are in the testing protocol for your sport, and also who are going to play on the away trip. Again, every additional person that we travel is one additional person that could contract COVID and risk, continuing the season or bringing that back to your team. So we're trying to limit those travel parties as much as possible to only the essential people. Once again, with your primary supervisor's approval, that's what you will need to determine essential personnel. This kind of goes back to travel party approval at the beginning of the year, but this just spells it out a little bit more. And know that your primary sport administrator is obviously going to work with you and can give consideration to any unique circumstances that are on the trip. From a business side, we just need to have that approval from the primary sport administrator on travel party size and schedule to move forward. Okay, so travel arrangement booking process. This is really the heart and the meat of this this presentation, and really where things kind of changed quite drastically this year. We'll start with the university expectations, and that may give you a better picture of why things are set up the way they are. So originally, the university wanted us to approve each trip through the COVID coordinator and the provost. Obviously, that was presenting a significant challenge for us from a timeline side of things. And so what we did is we worked with them to pre-approve our vendors that we would use for travel, so that if we use those vendors, we wouldn't have to approve every individual trip. So because of that, you are going to have to stick to our list of pre-approved vendors, which will be on a separate slide coming up. If for some reason you can't stick to a pre-approved vendor, whether that be for flight, ground, or hotel, then just work with me directly and we'll try to find an alternate solution. A great example would be skiing. Their lodging, they're not going to be able to go through our hotel partner to get lodges up at the ski resorts, so we'll work directly with them to get that done. So what athletics must do, instead of approving each trip prior to the trip with campus is we have to keep contracts for all the vendors on file, and those contracts have to include COVID-19 language, whether that be health and safety things or force majeure language, things like that. And so that's where I can kind of come in and be a great asset to you, is by being involved in all of your travel plans. I can just keep those things on file from the beginning, and you don't have to worry about that process should the university want to audit one of our trips or come in if there is a positive and need to see if our vendors met the criteria. We would have all of that and make sure that you're covered on that end of things. Finally, as athletics, we have to provide the university with a travel itinerary and a travel manifest for each individual trip. Now, this isn't any different than what you have done in the past, right? You've created your manifest, you've created your travel itinerary and provided it to people within athletics. That's still going to occur. The only difference is it will also be sent to campus for their files so that they know where everybody is at a certain time. So they know that, women's volleyball and, their travelers are all in Omaha on certain dates, should that be necessary. So details on these documents are obviously going to be on a separate slide. Again, it's going to seem like there's more red tape and more hoops to jump through, and there is, but this format that we've created has been well thought through, and we think that this is the best way to make your life easier, considering all of the requirements that need to be met for COVID-19 travel. So again, just work with me directly. I'm happy to work with you. I've been on your side as a director of ops. I know what, the amazing amount of work that goes into travel. And so I'm here to help in whatever way I can. Okay, so air versus ground decision. We talked a little bit about this already. The preferred method of travel is obviously going to be ground transportation. We need to use that as much as possible. It's the safest way. It's the cheapest way in most cases. And it's going to be the preferred method. Now, obviously, if you're at a distance that's kind of in between, whether ground transportation is the right play or air travel is the right play, that's where we'll just defer to the primary sport administrator, talk with that and senior staff, and bring back their decision for that specific trip. They will, take into consideration everything from class time of year, all of the things that could, proximity to the next competition, things like that, that may be needed to make that decision. So ground transportation requirements, again, we talked about it. You have to use either university vehicles like tennis vans or ski vans, or pre-approved vendors. That'll be coming up here on the next slide. Ride-sharing services and public transportation are prohibited at this time. So no taking Ubers to and from the airport, no letting the coaches go take an Uber to go eat, something like that. Can't use the train to get to the airport. We'll need to use other methods of travel. Now, for your ground transportation, if you're going to contract it with somebody, I'll need to be included on all your communications, and that would be requests, quotes, and vendor selections. So the easiest way to do that is just CC me on everything. I have files for each sport, so it's better for me to get more communication than less. So just go ahead and CC me on that. I'll throw it in a folder, and that way I know what's going on related to your ground transportation needs, should there be any questions. Now, the difference here too is that I will have to sign all contracts associated with your ground transportation. So, you can't just reach out to ACE or Hermes or anything like that and sign a contract. You'll need to do that through me. If you are booking enterprise vans or rental cars, if you're a team that does that, I would suggest that you just request that when you request your flight. That will suffice on that end. If you are going to do it outside of using shorts, if you're going to do that with Enterprise or National on your own, then I'll need to be involved in that decision as well. The good news is at this time, the 50% capacity requirement has been waived for members of the same cohort. So, originally we thought maybe we would have some additional expense with multiple buses or vans. At this time, that requirement has been waived, but we would suggest creating a seating chart in any situation that keeps roommates together and position groups separated, so that if there is a positive, you would be able to do the contact tracing and maybe keep your team intact for competitions moving forward. Now here's the list of pre-approved vendors. We'll start with our rental car agency. Most of you know this, that Enterprise and National are our corporate rental car agency partners. We do have a code. It's NA12DU written right there. If you use that code, it gets you the DU corporate rate as well as includes insurance on the vehicle. So Shorts has this information. So if you do book the vans or through Shorts, they will automatically use the NA12DU, but you don't need to add insurance to that because that's a part of it. Also, if you want to get rewards, I can set you up on an Emerald Club account if you don't have one. And Enterprise also said that they will match, like if you have a Hertz account or anything like that, they will match where you currently are with them as you enter the Emerald Club. So for our local charter bus service, we have 2 corporate sponsors that need to be utilized for any airport transfers or local or regional competitions that we're going to drive to. So any day trips, for sure, we need to use these vendors. If it's gonna be an overnight trip that we're driving, we'll get quotes from these vendors as well as our other bus company, which you'll see next. But Ace Express and Hermes Worldwide are our 2 local charter bus companies. Hermes does have some smaller vehicles that can assist as well if you're needing that. But again, it's probably more cost effective to go through Enterprise in that case. But their contact information is there, Wendy Opperman and for Ace Express and Jorge Sanchez for Hermes Worldwide. And just include me on any emails that you have with these vendors. I'm very close with them at this point in time, and so I can help out wherever we need to. And again, I'll have to sign any confirmations that you get. Okay, so for non-local charter bus service, if you're a team that needs buses on the road, I know in the past we've used custom tours. That's no longer the case. You'll need to go through STM Driven, which is Shorts Travel Management's bus division. The good news is I've seen some quotes come back for basketball and hockey at this point, and their prices are lower than what we've seen in the past. Nick Gillen is great to work with. He's your contact with Shorts STM Driven. And just include me again on any information. I'll have to sign off on any confirmations. But if we do have, I think it's important to note that I know that some of you have specific bus companies and specific drivers that you like to use in certain locations. Unfortunately, because of COVID this year and our need to go through campus with everything with pre-approved vendors, you'll still need to contract with that company through STM Driven, but just tell Nick about the company and the driver and he'll get it done. He's worked in the industry for a lot of years and he has a lot of contacts. So we'll make sure that you get that driver and bus. We just need to contract it through STM Driven as they write in COVID language for us, and they keep each company's COVID policies on file so that if we need to get them, I can just give Nick a call and get those policies. Finally, don't use STM Driven for local airport transfers or like day trips. Definitely refer to the previous slide with Ace and Hermes for that. But if we do have a trip that we're going to bus to from campus and it's overnight, I would like to have us go ahead and get quotes from all 3 vendors just so that we have those quotes on file if the university needs to ask for them. Okay, so air transportation, this doesn't change. As previously, you'll have to go through Shorts for all of your team travel air transportation arrangements. The difference this year is instead of contacting them via email, they requested that you submit your request through the Shorts travel portal just because they have some unique hours at times because their business has been low. So that way, you know, it doesn't get lost in the shuffle. It goes directly to one of their agents if our agent, Shorts, Sharm, is not available. So if you need help with the portal, like if you don't have access or you need assistance in booking a trip through the portal, you know, requesting the airline and maybe Enterprise vans, just contact me and I can help you individually get all that set up. Now, again, I need to be included. Just CC me on everything when it comes to, you know, getting your requests, your quotes, and your selections. We need to make sure that that I have those things on file, like I mentioned previously for the university. So it's just easier if you CC me from the beginning so that I'm not collecting that information from you in a forward type of scenario. The vendor selections, so like vendor meaning airline, the airline selections will be made using the researched list of vendors. So we did a lot of research prior to the season to see which airlines were kind of doing the best as far as COVID goes, cleaning between trips, doing deep cleaning, wearing masks, testing their personnel, things like that. And so we have a list of vendors that we'll use to make our decision on who to fly with. And finally, it's really highly recommended, just like we recommended for ground transportation, that you have a seating chart that keeps roommates together and position groups separated in the event that there is a positive. So here's our research list of vendors. Again, our preferred airlines, Southwest, United, and Delta. This is pretty much what everybody uses all the time. Those stay the same and acceptable. If we really need to use them, would be American and Frontier. Any other airline would not be allowed to be used this year. Okay, lodging requirements. Now this is going to be another one where I know people are maybe going to push back, but we need to have all of our lodging arranged through STM Stay. So this is Shorts Travel Management as well. I know skiing specifically work with me, like we mentioned before, to book lodges. STM Stay can't help with that. I know a lot of people have used third-party vendors to help them get their hotel arrangements made, or maybe they've made them on their own and they are confident that they can get a better price. Maybe you have a specific location that you use every single time and you have a contact in there. That's great. Just work with STM Stay directly to to include those properties in the bid. We need to have the contract go through STM Stay simply because they're writing in our COVID force majeure language, as well as pre-screening each of the hotels to make sure that they have COVID-19 measures in place for their catering services and their room cleaning and all of that. So that's why campus approved them to be our hotel vendor. And so we'll have to use them exclusively. If, like I said, if you have a specific location, just let them know so that it's included in the bid. And then obviously all need to be included on your initial request, as well as the quotes that come back and then what your selections are. You need to make sure that, the selections are made in the safest way possible with the correct vendors. The other change with hotels is, like previously you put the hotel on your travel card and you sign the contracts. This year I will sign the contracts and put the hotel charges on my P card. Now, trust me, it's a lot more work for me than you. And so while it may seem like an extra hoop to have me involved and me sign the contracts, it's going to be a lot easier on the back end, because then I'll have all of those contracts on file when we need to provide them to the university. And it just takes one thing off of your plate. I'll take care of the billing and make sure that everything's covered on that end. So vendor selections will be made using a research list, just like we did with airlines. And just know that no more than 2 individuals are allowed per hotel room. This is, again, related to contact tracing and making sure that we are being as safe as possible. And we really highly advise that staff members have their own hotel rooms, simply because they're not on campus with on-campus roommates, things like that. And so because they have kind of have their lives outside of the team, it's better to keep them separated than rooming with one another. Okay, here's our hotel vendors. It's the typical ones: Marriott brands, Hilton brands, IHG brands. That's going to cover probably 95% of the hotels we use. Other acceptable vendors would be Hyatt and Omni. Any other brands we would have to avoid at this time. Okay, food service requirements. Now this is one that we've worked really hard with campus to try to come up with some exceptions to make it possible for us to provide food on the road. Originally, we weren't allowed to eat in vehicles, some of those things. And I think that we're in a good spot with this. It will be a little bit challenging, as you'll see, but we can work together to kind of come up with some creative solutions. So first off, you're not allowed to eat inside restaurants. I know most of our teams utilize restaurants as a big part of their team travel piece. You can still utilize those restaurants. You just need to do it as individually packaged items that are picked up or delivered. So that's a change there. Grocery store items obviously are also acceptable. They can be delivered. You can pick them up. You could purchase them prior to the trip if it's a local trip. And hotel catering and other catering can be utilized, but the thing is we'll have to have COVID-19 health and safety measures in place, and we have to have a signed contract with that vendor on file. So again, that's where just work with me, keep me included so that we can get that contract on file prior to your trip if you need to use an outside caterer other than the hotel. Also, if we use a catering service, we need to make sure that a staff member is present during the entirety of the meal to monitor the compliance with COVID. Continuing on with food service requirements, this year per diem is not going to be useful for you, to be quite honest. It's not a very safe or practical plan to have your travelers go out and into individual restaurants and purchase their individual meals. So really, you just need to be ordering individually boxed meals that you pick up, or that are delivered. That just minimizes contact and increases safety. And again, these things aren't made to make your life harder. It's made to keep everybody safe so that your season can continue on. Another really challenging piece is going to be that it's prohibited for people to eat from airport terminal restaurants. Okay, so I know that's huge for most of us. We give the per diem, they go to the airport, they go get their food, and we go on our way. We got to be a little bit more strategic this year, provide a meal, provide snacks prior to leaving to the airport, and make sure that your athletes and your staff and everybody brings their own snacks. I mean, there could be delays, there could be things. Make sure people are bringing their own snacks. It's really important because, ordering from those restaurants is not going to be allowed. Finally, consuming food in vehicles. This should be avoided. It's a tight space. You take those masks off, you're eating. I mean, it's not ideal from a COVID safety standpoint, but we know that there's going to be situations where you have to eat in the bus. You're taking an 8-hour bus ride and you need to eat on the way. You're coming back from a late game, in Colorado Springs, and you need to eat the post-game meal on the bus. So we get that happens. If that's the case, we really advise that you establish a meal time that minimizes the time spent with masks off, eat, and then get those masks right back. Okay, so ARMS away travel approval process. So this is kind of a sleek tool that we've developed to try to help piece together the travel manifest and the travel itineraries and make sure that the campus receives those. So no later than within 24 to 48 hours of planned departure, you'll need to submit your sports travel itinerary and manifest via the ARMS form titled Travel Party for Away Competition form. So what this will do is you'll submit your itinerary and manifest attached and the information that the form requires. It'll go to your primary sport administrator. They'll approve it. Compliance will approve that everybody's eligible. And then it will come to me. Sports medicine sends me the injury report. So as long as no injured players are traveling, then I'll approve it. I'll make sure that your itinerary and manifest includes everything that will be on the slides coming up. Once all of us approve that, then it's sent to the university so that they can have a copy of the manifest and travel itinerary. So that being said, it's really important that your itinerary includes these things because this is what the campus requires your itinerary to have. And since they'll be receiving it through the form, make sure that your itinerary has this, or your trip will not be approved by me. I'll send it back to you. You'll have to fix it and send it back through the whole process again. So it's better to just do it right the first time. So your itinerary must include a basic itinerary of details, including departure and return times, and a timetable for each day of the trip. Okay, that's standard. That's what you do anyways. Include your airline information. So what airline you're flying, Southwest, United, whatever it might be, the flight numbers and the flight times. Include your hotel name, address, and phone number, your ground transportation, like different names if you have multiple, and contact info. And then make sure that there is your food service information. So on your itinerary, if you're going to have Chipotle for lunch, put Chipotle on there. If you're going to have, Olive Garden for dinner, put Olive Garden on there so that we know what the plan is for each meal. So the travel manifest must include your list of all your travelers, of course, but campus also requested that we have their campus ID, so their 87 number included on that travel manifest. So just throw that on next to each person in the event that somebody is positive, their campus may request that 87 number to pull up their record and things like that. The hotel rooming list, if you are staying overnight, you need to provide the rooming list so that we know who's rooming with who in case there does need to be contact tracing, so that there can be those notifications sent out. And finally, coach and director of ops contact information. The cell phone number of the person who's going to be the university host, as it is written in the policy, which is the person that is responsible for ensuring the COVID protocols are being adhered to. Okay, trip requirements. So there is another PowerPoint presentation that is out there that goes over the protocols related to the trip itself. So definitely watch that and read through the protocols, but these are also helpful for you as you're planning. Prior to a traveler's first trip, they have to have completed the return to campus requirements. This should already be done. It's what was required back in August or September for kids to come back to campus. So that should be checked off the list for everybody. The second one, however, is an ARMS travel protocol acknowledgement form that they have to sign, saying that they've read the protocol or watched the presentation and that they agree to adhere to the protocols. And if they don't, that there is significant discipline that could result from that. So make sure that your travelers have done both of these. Now, on the day of travel, each traveler has to do what they're always doing, which is, going into the Everbridge app, filling out the daily symptom monitoring. If their temperature is above 100.4, then they can't travel, of course. But one thing that you'll have to do, or a staff member must do, is to take each traveler's temperature prior to entering the bus, whether that's going to the airport or going to competition. So make sure you have one of those thermometers. If you don't, contact shared services. Within 10 minutes prior to boarding, make sure your student athletes wash their hands or use hand sanitizer. I would suggest just having a bottle with you, putting it on their hands while they enter the bus. Make sure everyone's maintaining that social distance and wearing their face mask while they wait for transportation and throughout the trip. So requirements throughout the trip, these are the common sense things that we've all been doing over these last many months, which is, wash your hands often with soap and water for 20 seconds or use hand sanitizer with 60% alcohol. This is the tough one, okay? You got to keep contact with people outside of the testing schema or the team. You got to avoid that. And really the being is we don't know where those people have been and if they're sick or not. And so we need to just avoid them as much as possible. Now, that, of course, would include family and friends who come to watch games when we're on the road. And so that may be a pretty difficult requirement this year for your athletes and their parents. But as of right now, that's the policy as it is written. And so we'll need to, kind of avoid those situations as much as possible. Also, travelers should stay with the team at all times and keep their social distancing. And then, just avoid, this is kind of common sense as well, avoid tight and closed spaces like elevators, take the stairs instead. And then, of course, just follow all the applicable DU COVID-19 protocols, which is symptom monitoring, wearing your face mask, maintaining your social distance throughout the trip. All right, so this is the big one, the plan for positive or symptomatic travelers. I think it's important to just note that we're doing everything we possibly can to not have this occur while we travel. We're doing the testing prior to leaving, we're monitoring the symptoms, we're taking the temperature. And if there's ever anybody on the line, like maybe they start to feel sick, I would highly recommend that you keep them home because it'll be a lot easier to keep them here on campus than if that ends up being true and someone's symptomatic or is a positive on the road. Now, if it happens, if we're on the road and someone gets symptomatic, someone gets a positive or whatever it might be, we're obviously going to work on a case-by-case basis there. We're going to work with sports medicine. You'll work with me to get travel arrangements made. We'll work with the campus to do the contact tracing and everything else. We'll work with local health officials and the opponents' team, policies and things to figure out what's the best practice moving forward. But these next slides kind of give you an idea of some guidelines that we'll take. So if there is a symptomatic traveler, which is obviously someone who starts to express the symptoms of COVID-19, that person should immediately consult with the DU sports medicine personnel and isolate in their hotel room. So if they have a roommate, you might need to get an extra room, get that person out of that room and separate them so that the affected individual has their own space to isolate. You'll need to bring them food and drinks so they don't have to leave the hotel room. And then the coach or director of ops, who's the university host, should notify report COVID at du.edu. And then they can work with me to figure out some logistical arrangements to get that person back to Denver. And that'll be based on whether that's a possibility or not, which we'll talk about in a little bit. The individual that is affected won't have access to campus for 10 days or until they have a negative test and 24 hours of symptom-free. And then other people on the trip don't necessarily need to be notified about it, but daily symptom monitoring should continue to be recorded. Now, if there's a close contact, which is obviously someone who has been in close contact with a known positive, described as being within 6 feet for 15 minutes or more cumulatively over a 24-hour period, then the coach or director of ops should report COVID. That individual should isolate in the hotel room with food and drink being delivered to them. I'll work with you to figure out logistical arrangements travel-wise to get them back home. And the individual will no longer have access to campus for 14 days. Other participants don't need to be notified, but symptom monitoring should continue. Now, if we have a positive, which is obviously someone who's been notified that they're positive, the individual should alert the sports medicine personnel if they don't already know. They need to hit the COVID self-report button. The coach or director of ops should notify report COVID at du.edu. That person should isolate in their hotel room with food and drink being delivered. I'll work with you to get the travel arrangements made. That person obviously doesn't have access to campus for 10 days after the test date, 3 days of declining symptoms, and 1 day of fever-free with no medication. And then the additional thing is that with the help of the DU contact tracing team, the coach or director of ops will need to facilitate the notification of any of the other travelers who've been determined to be in close contact, and provide vicinity notices to anybody in the vicinity, which would probably be everybody on the travel party. So our priority would be, if this happens, our priority would be to get an individual back to Denver where they can be taken care of by the DU system. However, we'll have to defer to local city and state public orders regarding travel when COVID-19 positive or primary contact occurs. So if they allow us to travel and we're within driving distance, we'll get them back home through renting a separate car. If they cannot travel, they may be required to stay in quarantine in that host city. So if travel is allowed, so if we're within driving distance, we're allowed to travel, a staff member should be identified to rent a separate vehicle, transport them back home. Now, I would really highly recommend that you identify that staff member before you leave so that they know if there's a positive, I got to get in a car and drive somebody back. Both the staff member and affected individual will be provided with N95 masks to use during the return trip to Denver. And upon arrival in Denver, the affected individual and staff member will follow the COVID-19 protocols provided by the university. Now, if travel is not allowed, like whether we're too far away to drive or state and public health officials won't let us leave and we have to quarantine there, our first priority would have the person quarantine on the host campus so that meals and medical care are provided. If that's the case, a staff member might not have to be present, and then transportation could be arranged after the quarantine. If, however, the individual can't stay on campus and needs to stay in a hotel, we would have the staff member stay in town so that they could assist with meals and transportation after quarantine. But again, just make sure that you make that decision prior to the trip about who would stay back and who would have to stay with that person. In either case, if the affected individual is a minor, we would have a staff member stay. Now, if we get home and there's a positive result within 48 hours after a contest, then we would need to contact the conference as well as the opponent and let them know so that they could do what they need to do as well. This would be true of anybody visiting DU on the flip side. Finally, cancellation and rescheduling of away competitions. As you know, we work closely with our opponent schools, conferences, and the NCAA. As well as governmental authorities to determine if competitions are considered safe or we need to cancel or postpone. We'll continue to do that, and should any of those people decide that it's unsafe to travel, then we would abide by those decisions. Okay, that was a lot. It's going to be an interesting year. You and I are going to become great friends. Again, just CC me on everything related to travel. once we get the approval from your primary sport administrator related to your schedule and your travel party, we'll get started on looking into travel things. And yeah, I'm here to help. I hope that this will be an opportunity for us to be creative, to work together, and come up with some awesome solutions as we go through this season. Again, I'm here to help. I'm not here to try to make your life worse. And trust me, yeah, it's going to be a fun year for us. So here is my contact information again. Please put your cell phone, put my cell phone in your cell phone, my cell phone number in your cell phone, so that you can text me whenever you need me, and then email me with any questions. I'm pretty much on call, so feel free to give me a call or a text or shoot me an email anytime. If it's urgent, I would highly recommend texting. So thanks for your time, and go Pios.